It's being touted as the biggest drug bust in Canadian history and probably the most dramatic. A story covering 2 continents, a plane chase, and up to $1 billion worth of cocaine.
This was a big case. I considered it the largest case I'd ever worked.
We did not know anything about the pilot.
23 years for the pilot Boulanger. His name is Raymond Boulanger. Raymond Boulanger.
Well, I don't regret it. It was a hell of a lot of fun, let me tell you. It was quite a ride. I was involved in a lot of different operations.
Operations supervised by the CIA.
I used to think the CIA were the good guys, and then you start to realize the more you work for them, well, we're not the good guys. We're actually the bad guys. I talked with Pablo many times, and he was well into the CIA. They were all in bed with him. Cocaine. That's when it got interesting.
I was considered one of the biggest traffickers at that time. They asked me if I can help him, and I did.
The cartels have a history of violence, a wide trail of destruction and death.
Bad people.
It's the Far West.
It's all part of the game. My grandfather said there's 3 ways you can live life. You can lead, you can follow, or you can get the fuck out the way. I prefer to lead.
Raymond Boulanger. What a character, eh? My first impression? Yep, that guy's a bundle of nerves.
It was love at first sight, eh?
Well, I was pretty good at flying at low level and stuff like that, so, and I was a bit daredevil, let's put it that way.
I think that to be a bush pilot, you have to be passionate and a little crazy.
And that was the start of my flying career.
He took a lot of risks. What happened was bound to happen. He had an accident.
When you're looking for trouble, you're gonna find it.
They said there's a contract coming up. Nobody said, do you want to go to Asia? That's all part of the black operations cycles. But you're generally getting shot at most of the time, yeah.
So that was the start of his adventures. It's probably what influenced what was to come. Time would tell.
John Raymond, take 1.
Here we go.
How should we start the documentary?
How should we what? No idea. A huge boom, maybe? A zoom in on a conveyor? I don't know. I'm a born rebel. It's in my blood. People like bad boys. People like people that flip the bird at authority and the government. I've always been a black sheep. I always will be. I don't walk with the crowd, ever. Never did, ever in my life. I'm a loner. I'm like a lone wolf. You're responsible for your own actions, not anybody else's.
Raymond Boulanger, in many ways, he's like a modern-day Indiana Jones. Like a Formula One pilot, only he pilots planes.
He has flown over 50 aircrafts. His career is quite unique in the aviation world. Few pilots have flown that many planes in such different conditions as well.
It's as if he were born piloting a plane. It was in his blood.
I think he's better than most pilots. He's quite a character, Raymond Boulanger.
He was able to work under a lot of pressure. He was capable of taking huge risks.
When you take a look at his life, there aren't many people that would have done all of that. There are very few people like him. We have to keep that in mind. He's a one-of-a-kind pilot.
He was a bandit in legal terms, but I've always seen him as a gentleman.
He was very polite, respectful, funny, and crazy.
2 arrests, 2 escapes, and caught a 3rd time after being on the run for a year.
Raymond wasn't easy to manage.
Listen, you're a pretty incredible person, a really likable guy, and you seem to be able to deal with the risk involved in what you do in a remarkable way.
A little unsettling, I must admit.
Well, certain people it seems like a lot, but that's how it is. And there's risk in everything we do. Without risk, there's no reward. You know, we're pirates. We have ways and means to get things done. You want to fuck with us, we'll fuck with you. That's the name of the game.
If I did illegal stuff like that, well, I wouldn't be too vocal about it.
Hold on, hello?
Yes, Raymond.
Yes.
Jacques Normando speaking.
Ah, Jacques Normando. Okay. We're shooting. Yeah, but sure, no problem. Go ahead. We're shooting. But yeah.
You have to leave the room to speak privately with your lawyer. Of course, I tend to tell clients not to extrapolate their way of life. We've tried to tell Mr. Boulanger to avoid going into the details of his situation, given the circumstances.
Did it work?
More or less. I'd say in this case it was a challenge. Okay, before you answer all their questions, there are a few details I would have liked to go over with you privately. Can we talk now? Is it safe?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Go ahead.
If you need to, go to another room. All right, here goes.
Okay.
There isn't a lack of witnesses, stories, or accounts of this adventure concerning the Casey case.
You come to realize, well, I can't believe it all. I can't.
Most of the things that I knew about him is because he himself told me about that.
Is he going to say exactly what happened? From his perspective, I think so.
Here's the story. You either like it or you don't. If you don't like it, tough shit. Could I care less? Couldn't give a damn. Period. It's that simple. Great fucking sound, eh? It's like music to my ears.
Radio, Romeo Mike, Quebec, final descent, strip 25.
My brother had been born and they were expecting a girl the second time round. When I arrived, well, I was a boy. So that was it. John was the first name that came out, so I ended up with John Raymond. Well, what's funny is that in all the documents when I worked in Black Ops, the passports, all the passports I had, my identities, there was a John in all of them. A John Kelly, John Clarkson, it always started with a John. It was a traditional thing in a sense. My Scottish relatives, they all had a John in their family. My mother was Scottish. She was born in Kilmarnock, Ayrshire, and met my dad in 1943 in Glasgow. And my mum came over here as a war bride. 1943, she arrived in Quebec City. And my grandfather bought her a fur coat because he figured she wasn't dressed well enough for Canadian cold. So he bought her a big fur coat, which she kept all her life, beaver coat. My dad didn't arrive until 45, and then they sent him home. But my mum was already here. Oh, well, my dad was the superintendent of the foundry here in Montjoly, and he managed quite a lot of employees. He was pretty well known. He was a war hero here, and he was also a staff sergeant. My father was really well known around here. In the early 30s, it was the Great Depression, and that's when he started his career. As a bootlegger. Oh, that's it. Well, the kids used to do that. Back that was in the Prohibition. There was a lot of bootleg going on because Canada was exporting all the booze to the United States, and that was one of the jump-off points. You know, the 8 to 10-year-old crowd there, they would get paid to go and listen, spot for the revenuers, or the RCMP or the police. Let the bootleggers know so they could hide the booze before the cops got there. So they were getting paid 25 cents an hour for that. So in those days, that was big-time money. There's no such a thing as a legal way to make money. You make money or you don't make money, you know. Illegally, it all depends on whose perspective, you know.
Now, Raymond Boulanger's father was also one of the instigators of Raymond's future passion for aviation, because in the early 1960s, he started piloting himself.
I used to fly with my dad all the time, but I'd sit on his knees to fly, but my legs weren't long enough to reach down to the rudder pedals. He put these two big wooden blocks on the rudder pedals so that then I could touch them. I couldn't use the brakes, but I didn't really need to. I could actually touch the rudder pedals so I could fly. So that was kind of fun.
You see the point there? That's where I live, Avenue des Vétérans. There, right there below. We used to walk down here when we were kids.
Montjoly was an airport there for quite some time. During the war, it was a patrol airport. It was an air gunnery school for the Commonwealth Air Training Program. Quite a lot of activity, and several airlines were operating there. It was non-stop. They had quite a mix of airplanes. You never knew what was coming down, you know. It would be a York, and then a DC-4, then a C-46, and whoa, here comes a Globemaster. So it was quite impressive. We had quite a lot of fun. We'd sit around on the airport during recess and watch them coming and going all the time. We'd bring our little snacks and stuff like that and just go sit out there and, you know, on the butt in the hill and watch the airport. And I liked the DC-3 because it was a particularly graceful airplane. I loved the sound of the engines of the DC-3. It had a very particular sound to it. Only a DC-3 sounds like that. Comfortable roar of a big, heavy-duty piston engine. There's nothing like it. It's music. And sure enough, I grew up, and when I was 21 years old, I finally got my captain's check on a DC-3. There was no question in my mind. That's what I was going to be doing, flying one of those things when I grew up. Yeah. It has to be in your heart. It's love, you know. It's not a profession. I went to Cartierville and Ville-Saint-Laurent to Wandel Aviation so I could complete my commercial license, multi-engine, and instrument rating. And that was the start of my flying career. But that was a pretty busy airport.
Raymond Boulanger. What a character, eh? The first time I saw him, I think it was at dispatch at Wandel Aviation. My first impression? Yep, that guy's a bundle of nerves.
Ghislain de Rocher, he was my instructor when I did my commercial license. A little rough around the edges, definitely not the airline type, but an excellent pilot, so I got to know him pretty good.
He acted like a kid. That's why I nicknamed him Le Flo, or Kid. He was really, really skilled. But humans are like machines. There's always a way to go beyond one's limits. Hey, kid. Calm down, fuck, right?
There was a kind of freedom that existed back then that has probably vanished today. Today, there are many more pilots following set parameters in very precise security protocols. Back then, things were pretty open. People wanted to fly. They wanted a sense of freedom that wasn't allowed otherwise in society. As aviators or pilots, people got that taste of freedom.
The simple fact of piloting airplanes made you, attractive, let's say.
I've never done anything really in my life to seduce girls. To me, it's very secondary. So I was more interested in my flying and all that. Girls were not a priority in my life, ever, never were. It's always been my airplanes. But my first love happened when I was 17.
In 1966, I was 19. I was a pretty wild girl for the times. That day, Marie-France and I were in my car. We were driving around, and suddenly we saw a sign. Plane ride, fly over the city. I think that, if I recall correctly, it was $10. $10 for a plane ride? Let's do it.
One day, I don't recall it precisely, but two girls showed up, two friends. They showed up at Wandel Aviation, and they wanted a plane ride.
They came for an airplane ride, and they were dressed in these go-go girl type costumes, you know, like hippies, all flowery stuff. And they both arrived to go for the airplane ride.
We went in. There were a bunch of guys, Two of them stood out, Ghislain and Raymond.
So he took them up for their little $5 airplane ride. And we hit it off with both girls and started dating them. He dated Marie-France and I was dating Louise. So that started from there.
But the real story is that he and I and the two go-go dancer girls, both couples were married within a year.
It was love at first sight, eh? He was an excellent pilot. We did acrobatic flights. We did rolls. We did spins.
It was never enough.
Flying at low altitudes and chasing around there, just goofing off.
He was a daredevil.
We'd play tag. Ghislain and Marie-France were in one plane, and we'd be in another, and we'd chase after each other a bit.
It's a lot of fun to do that, loops and rolls and spins and dives. You know, it's fun.
It was completely illegal.
You just go very up fast and you just change attitude really fast and you get the zero part where you just float up and we chase each other around the cows fields and up and down.
The cows weren't scared. But you never do tricks like that at low altitudes close to horses. They go crazy. It's incredible. Forget about it. Horses, stay away from them. But the cows, no problem, okay?
Adrenaline, that's all part of it. That's basically why we fly, you know, and we enjoy being up in the air. That's the element.
It's never enough.
The thrill and the buzz, the adrenaline you get out of doing stuff like that, that's the whole feeling.
It was never enough.
I loved it. I always wanted him to do it again. I'd ask him to do it again and again and again. I'm sure that lots of pretty girls I would say he's a pretty good lover.
My God, show some restraint, please.
He was fearless. And he took a lot of risks, and of course, he had a taste for danger. So what happened was bound to happen. He had an accident.
When you're looking for trouble, you're going to find it. I was in Sainte-Thérèse. I was part-time chief instructor there. Raymond was flying there too. It was about a half an hour, not even a half an hour, just before sunset.
Raymond, Ghislain, and I were at the Galaxy Flying Club in Sainte-Thérèse, and a friend of his asked to go fly with him. His name was Robert Arsenault.
He was working towards his private license. He didn't have it yet. He said, come with me, you know. So I was about to leave to go home. It was about just past 6 in the afternoon. I said, okay, we'll go. We'll do one ride. So I went along with him.
So Raymond and Robert took off. Ghislain and I stayed behind. And we waited for them. They were supposed to be gone for 15 to 20 minutes.
The sun set, night fell, and they didn't come back.
A few minutes after takeoff, the plane crashed in an old military camp called Camp Bouchard.
The aircraft stalled out, you know, on a turn, and then we dove straight into the bush.
The accident was spectacular. Robert Arsenault was killed on the spot.
He died. His head was smashed into the instrument panel, and the control column, there was a little steering thing like that, was up his rib cage. So that was it. Me, I went through the windshield and everything, and right.
It was late in the evening. It was dark out. What was going on? I grabbed the phone and started making calls. I called the Quebec police and asked them if they knew something.
And I crashed just past 6, so I'd been up in the bush there for 6 hours. So I'd lost a lot of blood. I was pretty badly smashed up. I took my jeans, I wrapped them around my leg with some foam. So I was conscious enough to do that. The survival must have kicked in, the instinct kicked in. I have no recollection of doing it.
I finally got the news, and that evening was awful, awful, awful. 6 hours of pure hell is what it was, my God.
We found out that one of the two was theoretically deceased. And the other one was at the St. Jerome Hospital.
So my dad said, well, we better get in the car, let's go and see if it's ours, so.
I went to go see Raymond there that same evening. He was banged up pretty bad. And he was complaining. He was asking for morphine or anything else.
Yeah, both legs broken, all my left side, my jaw, punctured lungs, virtually smashed a ratchet. Jaw bones, all my left side was pretty well broken up.
He had broken bones all over his body, so it was really serious.
One could say it was a miracle he survived the crash.
Unfortunately, Robert didn't have such luck. Oh, Robert, he passed away.
In theory, it was Raymond's responsibility to say, whoa, 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 stop it.
Why in the hell should I have any regrets? About what? Why should I regret anything? I don't have any regrets for it. Period. It happened, it is. I took responsibility for it. Move on. What's the point of sticking on this thing?
I said, all right, listen, did you learn anything? Yeah. I asked him what he could do to change his ways, given the lessons he learned. He said, nothing. I'm not convinced that the accident, as serious as it was, made him want to change his ways at all, or his frame of mind. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Something happens to him one day, and the next day it's done, it's behind him. He started flying again, life was beautiful. I don't think he has any regrets, no, I don't think so.
There's lots of other stuff that I don't feel responsible for, too. That's my job. When I take somebody out in a combat operation, I send him on a one-way ticket to visit his ancestors. I don't go feeling responsible for that either. All is fair in love and war, so that's just the name of the game.
After the accident, he kept on working a bit at Wandel's, but I think he needed more than that. He wanted to venture out into the unknown. An opportunity knocked eventually. For example, one of his friends started a company called Dolbeau Aviation. That's where he got his first job as a bush pilot.
I think that to be a bush pilot, you have to be passionate and a little crazy.
It's physically difficult, it's very hard, and you're always flying in treacherous conditions, bad weather and stuff like that. So I take my hat off to bush pilots. They're the best in the world.
Most of the time, bush pilots transport hunters, fishermen, geologists, and prospectors to remote places. You have to be able to land on land and water at any time.
Bush pilots, as opposed to aviators that are members of a club or work for an air carrier, have to plan their trips from A to Z. They have to take into account all the resources they will need, like fuel. They must make sure that where they land, gasoline cans are ready in order to refuel and make the round trip. They must take into account weather conditions. They are 100% responsible for their flights.
A good pilot has to understand all the possible dangers and be able to face them.
The dangers are present much more in the bush because of the remoteness of the areas. You develop your skill, or you die doing it, one or the other. But that's all part of it. But there's always fire in the bush. You have to be very careful, because once the forest fire starts, it's pretty damn hard to stop it. And it gets out of control. That was the summer of 1971. It was a huge forest fire. God knows it burned out something like 850,000 acres or something like that. I'm not sure, but it was huge. I had to go evacuate some people from a lake, 5 American customers that were up there, get them out because it was an area-wide evacuation order. They wanted everybody out of the area. I flew up to Fire Lake to get these guys and picked the 5 of them up, and that's it. It was like a snowstorm, only it was cinders, ash.
There was smoke everywhere. You could see the ash falling, like huge snowflakes.
The fire was blazing. My God, it was nuts. So I went up there to get the guys, and I told them, get your asses on board, boys.
That's it. Leave the baggage, get in the plane, we're leaving. And we never got back to Albadell because the fire by that time had reached the west side of the lake, so I couldn't get back. So I just followed down the west side of Lake Mistassini, looking for a river that would run so I could follow that river westward and get the hell out of the fire. Treetops are all in flames and everything.
The treetops were burning. It was really intense.
It wasn't just a small fire. It was a huge one.
The Americans were all excited, though. They were filming it. It was a big adventure for them.
They thought it was big and exciting. Me, I had my side window down. I'm wiping the front window because of the soot and the cinders. Well, I was pretty damn concentrated in doing my job, so I wasn't going to kill my ass and all the rest of them. So you concentrate and you take care of what you're doing just to get your ass out of there, to make sure you don't become a statistic. So you just keep busy doing your damn best to get your skills to get you out of there. The heat had gone, everything was off the clock, and the engine was just, by the grace of God, was still ticking over. I said, it's got to stop. I saw this lake, and I said, okay, here it is. So I just pulled the power, and in I went.
Yeah, I cranked the flaps down, and I headed for the lake. Zoom! I cut the engine, dropped right in.
We had to stick the tail of the aircraft in the trees, and we cleared a few trees, and then we spent the night on top of the airplane as the fire burned its way past the mountain. Next step is figure out how long we're going to be here and how we get out of here.
Yeah, in the morning, once the sun rose, we got down from the plane and we saw a little island out on the northwest side of the lake, and it was quite wide, so we made it to the island. And the funny thing is that the Americans were all smokers, and in my survival kit I had a big can of Players tobacco. You know, the big Players cans they sell with rolling papers.
And they started rolling that, and I said, well, you should limit your cigarettes, because you could be here for a little while. No, we'll be out here in a couple of days. But within 2 or 3 days, they smoked all the tobacco. And then they ended up having to smoke the dry tea leaves.
Yeah, and we were stuck there for 13 days.
When I found out they had disappeared, Raymond was with them. It wasn't just a group of Americans. Again with the drama, again with the worry. It wasn't easy. I was kind of young to be a widow, but it was. Yeah, it was devastating. So along with me, his father and his sister, me, Jack and Gail. So we took Jack's car and we drove up to Chibougamau.
My engine, I'd run it every hour or so, and I had put a copper wire that ran it up to my HF antenna, and I ran 2 porcelain cups on the top of some trees, and I ran a wire there so I could increase the range of my reception or my transmission for my HF radio. The oil cooler was cracked and everything, so I couldn't leave the engine running for any more than a couple of minutes at a time.
Yeah, I did that for a number of days. If I remember correctly, it was a Monday morning, our 13th day. 13 is a lucky number for us. An auditor of the Canadian Air Force answered me that day, and he had just taken off from Albadell.
We got you. So he picked off, and then they flew right over us, and then they pinpointed us.
Finally, yeah, good news. He had been found. It was time to party.
There was a big party at the hotel that night. It was quite a celebration. Yeah, it was fun.
They thought we'd crashed into the lake. Yeah, but everything turned out fine.
And finally, time to go to bed. We went up to our room and closed the door. Louise, and she said, why didn't you get married? You don't have a husband, always be gone and this and that. She said, you have to make a choice. It's either me or your airplanes.
Something broke inside of me that day, probably. It was hard for me to accept that Raymond's #1 passion was planes. I wanted to be his #1 passion.
That was a bad decision she made, so anyway, she was invited to leave and locked the door on her way out. That was it. It was instantaneous. I don't take a long time to make decisions. I would be dead if I did. In my business, you have to act pretty damn quick.
That's what happened. Of course, during the divorce, things got pretty ugly. For me and for anyone, divorce is far from pleasant. It's painful, but that's how it is.
Game over. That was it. No woman ever gonna give me an ultimatum, ever. That was probably my last bush flight, I think. I handed in my resignation 3 or 4 weeks later. A month later, that's it. I'd had enough of forest fires. And there you have it. That was the wildfire story of June 71. I think it was in 71. And I started Black Operations the year after, 72, 73, something like that. The owners of the flying school where I was at were pilots that had worked there during the Second World War. They're very skilled pilots that developed their skills flying across very extremely difficult terrain to fly over. Well, I was pretty good at flying at low level and stuff like that, and I was a bit daredevil, let's put it that way. They said there's a contract coming up. Nobody said, do you want to go to Asia? That's all part of the Black Operations cycles.
At that time, the Americans were involved in the Vietnam War. It was during the last years of the war, in the early 70s. Officially, the U.S. troops were only supposed to be on mission in Vietnam, but they also had ops in Cambodia and Laos. They needed pilots to supply troops and, at the end of the war, to pull them out of there.
This particular type of operation where you would fly in at night, undercover, and relocate agents. You bring information out, you bring people in, take people out. It's just like a shuttle service, but clandestine because we're operating undercover. You see, Vietnam starts here, up north. All that's Vietnam, right here. We were stationed in this area, here. And I'd go all the way up to here and different places like Cambodia. We'd go, but we knew we were in red zones, and these were occupied by Viet Cong. But we went in and out, choo-choo, just like flies. We land, we do our thing, and leave like mosquitoes, doop-de-doop. And we leave real quickly, really quickly.
In Southeast Asia, you had to fly over rivers and jungles. Flying out there is really dangerous. And Raymond says that the conditions there were just about the roughest he flew in during his mercenary career.
There's never two flights exactly the same. And you're flying at night, and particularly if you're in the wet season, it rains all the time. Well, if you have the rainy season, the monsoon season, yeah, it's like rains. Makes for difficult flying conditions, but you generally can pick your way among the rain showers, yeah. It's quite tricky. Yeah, you got to be really careful. So you have to know your terrain, your landmarks pretty quick. And you have to be really snap fast and making a decision. Otherwise, you smash into the hills and kill yourself. It's very dangerous. That's why you stay low, so you go fast. You try to, camouflage yourself as much as possible. But you're generally getting shot at most of the time, yeah. This is not the kind of work for people that are overly cautious or fly by the book, because you better go somewhere else. It's a war. You're trying to kill the other guys. So you got to keep it together. You have to stay calm. There's no room for panic. Or you could stay right over the trees, which is a good technique too, right hugged to the trees, because they can hear the noise of the airplane, but they can't see it. So by the time they go, you're over them and past, so. They have very minimal chance of hitting you with small arms fire. That was very important to keep an eye on where the supplies were coming so that you had logistics and they knew where to bomb at particular times. But at one point, they just gave up. They just carpet bombed the whole area, Cambodia and everything. Just totally illegal what they did. It was a crime against humanity. And nobody was ever prosecuted for that. That's when I started thinking, the hell are these guys doing? I mean, what gives them the right to go and kill all these millions of people? Nobody asked them to come here.
When they started bombing Cambodia and Laos, Nixon was in charge. And what they were doing down there was just downright criminal. Fact is, you know, the Americans during the Vietnam War, they dropped more tons of bombs on Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos than they did during all of World War II. That's a pretty chilling image. It's not criminal. These people didn't do anything to the United States. They didn't give a shit about the U.S.
The parties that want these operations to take place don't want anybody to know that they're the ones that are organizing this because it's criminal. You know, you're killing people.
Nah, I don't miss it one bit. Southeast Asia wasn't my favorite place at all.
The Astronaut Club, that was a social club at the airport in Cartierville at Wandale Aviation. It was quite a lot of fun, so a lot of the activity pilots meet there, discuss jobs and who's flying where, and what's going on. Let's call it a glorified rumor mill fueled by beer, lots of beer.
Obviously, it was the 70s, swinging was in, and pilots followed suit. They'd swap contracts, and when people were looking for pilots for specific missions, you could meet them in those kinds of places.
And in one of those bars, Raymond Boulanger met someone by the name of Peter Knox. Who was he? He was a stunt artist, but he was also a stand-in for an American actor, James Coburn.
And he did a lot of flying and stuff like that, flying marijuana back from Mexico into the United States.
And so one night, he was having a drink with Raymond, and he said, listen, I'm looking for a co-pilot for a mission I'm going on south of the States. And he told Raymond, it's kind of a special mission.
Basically, what Peter Knox did was to take off from the States and go down to Mexico to pick up marijuana. Cocaine wasn't in the picture yet. It was all about marijuana.
I think that Raymond quickly came to understand that an empty plane means no money. He was making $35,000 to $40,000 per flight. It was his first experience transporting marijuana. For him, it was a job like any other. He didn't get a special thrill out of it, other than having to fly low. You had to avoid getting caught, so you had to fly below the radar.
It was kind of funny.
So that was the start of his adventures. It's probably what influenced what was to come. Time would tell.
They called them hippies in those days. They were peace and love, and they didn't want war, and they were the major engineering behind the protests against the Vietnam War. But the kind of people I pretty well associated with, they weren't of the hippie crowd type. You know, they were the cut and dry shirt and tie types, you know. They weren't your general goof-offs, smoking dope and hippies like that. Dress for the part, you know, in like jeans and t-shirt and ready to move quick. Couldn't be a hippie without smoking dope. You don't know what's going on around you. If you behave that way, you don't survive in this business.
The Vietnam War, picture it. It started around 1962. It lasted until 1975. So during that time, there were tens of thousands of military specialists. Some of them were aviation experts. Those people were looking for work in the United States and elsewhere, and what they knew especially was flying aircrafts.
At one point during his career, Raymond Boulanger met pilots that flew planes during the Vietnam War.
Most of them were potheads.
They were seen as pariahs. because there was an anti-war movement in the States. They were considered garbage, like failures.
A lot of pilots left their service after the Vietnam War, and they felt really free over there. It was complete freedom, the kind of freedom Raymond was looking for.
I think Raymond felt he had a lot in common with veterans.
Well, sure. Indeed, a lot of these guys were, combat pilots and had flown helicopters for several years in Vietnam. These guys were good.
These people had nothing left to lose?
You're skillful pilots, You're not bus drivers here. You're talking, it's a different story altogether. They just smoked dope all day long, but that was their normal state of affairs, so they functioned quite well. So they all ended up as drug addicts or doing clandestine stuff, working in the pot business, and that's basically where these guys were doing.
So they started flying marijuana into the United States from Mexico, and they asked Raymond Boulanger to join them. Basically, what these Vietnam vets did was to take off from a housing project in the Florida Keys, a project that had never been completely finished.
There were really wide streets and no houses, so they'd take off from there. Then they'd head down to Mexico to get the marijuana, and they'd bring it back to the Keys.
And it's during one of those flights that Raymond Boulanger made it out to Colombia for the first time.
It's pretty simple. When they would be ready to do a load, they'd call me up, I'd come down. So I'd go out there and I'd climb into DC-6, fire it up, and then cut to the east and then head down between Haiti and Cuba. And never go more 500-600 feet in a nice sunny day and head straight down to the Guajira in Colombia.
Here, it's all this area here.
You have to understand that Guajira is a very particular area. It's like no other place I've ever seen on the earth. It's a desert. It has a very mysterious aura about it. Strange, spiritual type thing, And I've never seen any place on earth like it. It's really, really weird. But it's beautiful. It has a strange beauty to it, just the same.
Have you ever been to the Guajira? It's the far west.
It's the most northern point of South America. It also touches the Venezuelan border. So, it's a territory that was historically marked by different forms of illicit commerce between the two countries.
Of course, just like from Mexico, marijuana runs were much shorter and less risky from there. It was also a passage point for cocaine and Colombian mafia and criminals. The Vietnam War veterans were key in all the Colombian criminality going on.
Being a pilot for drug traffickers is very dangerous, of course.
Well, I remember when I got there the first time, the wind was blowing so hard, and the strip wasn't very large, and it wasn't very long. This stuff is not for amateurs.
These people are obviously paid according to the dangers they face.
It's not just about the money. There is a sense of adventure, the desire to be someone as well.
Adventurous, sure. Insane, that's how I define them.
It's not just about making a lot of money. It's about how you make it.
I would land there, and there would be a reception party, of course, waiting for us. So I would land, I'd leave the engines number 3 and number 4 running, but they would load the aircraft from the left-hand side because I didn't have to fuel. And they would just load it up, and I'd start the 2 engines, take off, and back in Florida. I was usually back by 4:30 in the afternoon, and that was it.
I'd go eat crab and drink beer with a bag full of cash.
It's the first time Raymond Boulanger made it there, but that spot would become notorious in November 1992 because that's the peninsula from which Raymond Boulanger's Convair 580 took off to fly to Casey.
Park the airplane, get out, and that's it. Jump in the car and head out to Ma's Kitchen on the A1A, and the beer was good and cheap, and the stone crab, as much as you could eat. Just happened to be the place to hang out.
So at some point one night while sipping a beer, someone said, there's this company called Southern Airlines, and they're looking for pilots. But Southern Airlines, it turns out, was actually a front for the CIA.
You're not working for the CIA, you're working for companies that are working for the CIA or that are fronted, financed, and actually owned by the CIA. Well, the conflict was an insurgency in Nicaragua. They were trying to overthrow a communist government.
My fellow Americans, I must speak to you tonight about a mounting danger in Central America. I'm speaking of Nicaragua.
The CIA are the biggest drug dealers in the world, bar none. I went in the back of there and I saw a bag and I lifted the tarpaulin on it. It was a bales of cocaine. And then when I got back, I told my boss, I says, by the way, I said, we got cocaine in the airplane. He says, you know about that? I says, yeah. He says, mind your own business. He says, you're paid to fly the airplane. That's where the criminals are. And you think a guy like me that's doing my friggin' job, I'm a criminal? Yeah. Up yours, as I say to the Americans. Stuff it.